Greetings, ghoulies. I'm Serena and welcome to my Hall of Horrors. Today, I bring you my March reading wrap-up, all the horrific stories I read throughout the month. My apologies for my absence lately. I've been preoccupied with my main channel, but I hope to be posting more on here soon. I read 6 books this past month. Because I was so busy with my main channel, I didn't read quite as much as I could have. But 6 books is better than none. Unfortunately, there's only so many hours in a day, and I don't have time to juggle each and every one of my hobbies all at once. Especially for a ghoul that likes to sleep in. I suppose I could wake up earlier to get more things done, but I don't want to. I adore my slumber, and although I would like to get more things accomplished in a day, I'm not willing to sacrifice it, so it is what it is. But anyway, the first book I read in March was Frankie Graves Part 1, by my favorite author, Cameron Rubik. This is part 1 of a duology, so it's more of an origin story as opposed to just a straight up slasher. It is still a slasher technically, but it's much more near the end. The first half of the book is more Frankie's origins. This book is set in the 1950s and it follows Frankie Graves. It starts from when he was younger. Something tragic happened to him. I won't spoil it because I really recommend you guys read it. So then he has to go live with his grandmother who's terrible to him. And you really do feel for him. You really want him to succeed and leave this horrible situation, but he just doesn't. And he just grows into this evil teenager years later. That's all I'll say. I don't really want to give anything away, but from that point on, you're kind of just waiting for him to snap. It's definitely a slow burn, which normally doesn't work for me, but for some reason here it does. Once you fast forward to his teenage years, you kind of follow his slow descent into madness, and you're kind of just waiting for him to snap, and there's so many close calls. And it's very suspenseful and very intriguing, and I definitely recommend it. I'm really looking forward to reading the next part, which takes place in 1981. I ordered it a couple of weeks ago, and I look forward to reading it as soon as possible. So for Frankie Graves Part 1, I give it the very rare rating of 5 skulls out of 5. Next up, from the Bumps in the Night series, we have In the Mall of Madness by A.D. Arrow. We follow each other on Creepstagram. He seems like a very nice individual, and he just put out a new book that I look forward to buying as soon as possible. This is the first in his middle grade series, very reminiscent of Goosebumps, Ghosts of Fear Street, and other middle grade horror books of the 90s. It's definitely a lot darker than any Goosebumps book I've ever read though, which I was very pleasantly surprised about. This is about a small town full of small businesses and families, and one day this corporation arrives, builds a mall, and obviously everyone is upset because obviously a mall is going to ruin their businesses. But it's not quite what it sounds like, and I don't really want to say too much because I do recommend you read it for yourself. But basically the mall is like an evil entity, and it pulls people in and makes them shop. The story is basically a commentary on consumerism and how big companies will destroy small businesses. It has a very dark ending. Usually with stories like this, they end on a neutral or happy note. I was definitely expecting that, but I much prefer the approach A.D. Arrow took, and I wish more middle grade horror books weren't afraid to go there. I give In the Mall of Madness 4 skulls out of 5. My next book is actually a reread. I originally read it 3 years ago. It is Disco Death Trap by Cameron Rubik. Upon reading reviews for Frankie Graves, I was reminded that Disco Death Trap, the Frankie Graves duology, and Golf Curse are a part of the same universe, the Year of Blood, and they're all set in 1981. They're all standalones, you don't have to read them all to know what's going on, but they do have little nods to each other occasionally, which I find interesting. Upon remembering that, I wanted to go back and reread Disco Death Trap. I wanted to do it anyway because I really love this book, but it definitely inspired me to do so, and I thought I would do so before reading Frankie Graves Part 2 in case there's any Easter eggs, because this is technically the first chronological order because it's set on New Year's. I'm not too sure if it was the entire school because they did say there was seniors and freshmen and all that. I don't know if it was the entire school or if it was just different classes, but regardless, a ton of kids from the school. It was decided that they would all have a lock-ins on New Year's Eve. The year prior, there was a drunk driving accident involving some students, so the school decided it would be safer for the kids to be locked in the disco roller rink for the evening, so no one would be hurt again. So all these students are having a good time, dancing to disco music, celebrating New Year's Eve, but when the clock strikes 12 on New Year's 1981, terror ensues. Words can't even describe how much I love this book. It's definitely one of my favorite books ever. The characters are so enjoyable. Cameron Rapike, is just so good at writing characters, in my opinion. And he has such a way of making them really likable so that when they die, you actually feel like a gut punch, if that makes sense. The first half of the book is just getting to know the characters, them having fun on New Year's Eve, dancing, and exploring their relationships with each other. And his characters and his writing are so good that I would honestly just read the book if it was that. So when it gets to the bloodshed in the latter half of the book, it's really almost heartbreaking. It is really kind of depressing in a way, especially rereading it, knowing what's going to happen to these characters. But I also think it's really impressive that you can make someone feel such a strong emotion to characters dying. Not even just characters dying, but in a slasher novel. Most slashers, these characters are kind of just there to die. You don't really care about their personalities. You know what I mean? When certain characters die, I'm just damn. Yeah, this book is very gory and it's excellent. You can find it on Amazon. Please do yourself a favor and go read it. I strongly recommend. If it wasn't obvious already, I give Disco Death Trap 5 skulls out of 5. Next is Terror Zone by Vince Rogers. This is about a group of preteen boys hanging out in their friend's basement, and they decide to put on a scary movie. So they look one up online, and they come across one called Terror Zone. But the monster on screen is not just special effects, it's real. And it pulls them into essentially an upside down. They have to fight their way out and find a way back home. You all know I judge books by their covers. If it wasn't for this sick-ass art, I don't know if I would have picked it up personally. I did decide to give it a chance. It was affordable enough. It wasn't really my kind of story. It's more of action-adventure than I would like, personally. There's another book from this author in this list. You'll see it soon, but this one is more middle grade, while the next one is an adult horror. If you like Stranger Things, you might like this, but I'm not super crazy into Stranger Things, so to me it was kind of whatever. It was fine. If it was a full-length novel, I probably would have DNF'd it, personally. But as a short story, it's serviceable. I gave Terror Zone 3 skulls out of 5. Next, we have Widow's Point by Richard Chizmar and W.H. Chizmar. I really adored this. If I had to compare it to something, I would say it's Blair Witch Project meets Hell House if it was located at a lighthouse. It really did seem like a modern day Hell House to me. And it's funny because they actually do name drop the Belasco house in the very beginning, which is the name of the house in Hell House. When I started reading this, I had just finished that book a week or so prior, so it's funny. This book is in the found footage format, which I find to be very interesting. It's kind of like Episode 13 by Craig DeLuey, which I read last year. I really adored that book as well. This book is also set in Canada, which I found to be very fun. Set in Nova Scotia. Over the decades, there's been many horrible tragedies that happened at this lighthouse, dating back to the 30s, and people keep on visiting because it's kind of like the town's local haunted house. Anytime people come to visit, terrible things happen to them. In 2017, this author goes to stay there for 3 days. He locks himself in, and he kind of just goes into madness. And after 3 days, he disappears. That segment of the book is the first 70-ish pages. It almost acts like a Casey Becker sort of cold open. Very creepy. Honestly, it makes for a really good short story alone, but the rest of the book is really good too. This incident kind of sparks interest in the lighthouse again, and fast forward to present day, 2025, this group of paranormal researchers who run a YouTube channel for this sort of thing decide to make a trip and check it out. What happens is very scary. It's one of the scariest books I've ever read, truly. I don't want to give anything away, but the horror in this book is not really in your face. It's more of a creeping dread kind of feeling, if that makes any sense. I find it to be much more effective than haunted house stories. I give Widow's Point 4 skulls out of 5. Lastly, I read The Corpse in the Cold Room by Vince Rogers. One night, this mysterious body bag is dropped off to the morticians at a funeral home, and they're told, whatever you do not dethaw the body and do not open the bag. I don't want to give much away, but basically, the corpse in this body bag is no longer human. It's this otherworldly being trying to resemble a human. It's very similar to The Thing. I'm so obsessed with this cover too. What really drew me to these books when I saw them on Bookstagram is they literally look like vintage horror novels from the 80s and 90s. I literally thought they were until I saw otherwise. I knew even if I wasn't crazy about these books, I was still going to keep them just for the covers alone, because like, wow. It's a short and simple little horror story. I definitely enjoyed it more than Terror Zone, but I would still rank it about the same. But while Terror Zone is like a middle of the road 3, I would say Corpse in the Cold Room is a strong 3 skulls out of 5. If I had to pick a favorite of the month, I would have to say Disco Death Trap. However, that might be cheating because I already knew I loved that book. So, besides Disco Death Trap, I would have to say Frankie Graves Part 1. Thank you all very much for watching, Ghoulies. I hope I influenced you in some way. If you're a fan of horror books like me, I definitely recommend some of the books I talked about here today. They definitely need more recognition and readers. I hope to pump out some more videos soon, Ghoulies. Again, apologies for my absence. Until we meet again, my dreadful disciples of darkness, I will see you all in the next video. Goodbye.